Good morning. It's great to see everyone. Thank you guys for coming in and taking some time to listen to our special InDay speaker. I gave Gavin a call a few months ago to see whether or not he'd be interested in speaking to us. I left a pretty lengthy voicemail and explained to him what the series was and who we've had before and topics covered, and I think he had no idea what this was. He responds back and he goes, yeah, the InDay speaker series. I love that. So it's good to know that it's good to know that it's resonating to people outside of LinkedIn. Gavin has had a storied career in government. He started out on the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco and then later became the youngest elected mayor in San Francisco at the age of 34. So actually, I just turned 29.
Old by your standards, I know.
Just turned 29 today.
You'll be retired at 34.
4 years to beat you, which I probably won't. And now he is the lieutenant governor of the great state of California. He has long been a champion of equal rights and a tireless advocate for students, something that is very near and dear to my heart as the BD lead for our own higher education initiative. So, did you know that?
No, I didn't. Yeah, no. Got me.
I think one of his greatest strengths has always been knowing where the country is going to go. And he's always been a champion of causes that may be at times ahead of its time. And I can tell you through my own experience in politics, it takes a lot of courage to do that. So it's always nice to have someone who kind of sees where we're going. One of the reasons why I love working at LinkedIn is because we are tackling a massive economic issue in a drastically different way, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but in a more productive way, I think, than government.
Unbelievable. What a shot.
Sorry.
My gosh. This is going to end badly. Yeah.
You know, we are fundamentally helping people improve their lives and their careers, and at the most basic level, helping people provide for their families, put food on the table. And we're doing that all in a way where there's no public policy involved. There's no amending or changing a law. There's no debate. There's no election. We are simply doing this by the raw power of our innovation, which is why I'm so excited that Gavin's here, because he has been a vibrant member of our government that has been able to adopt, welcome, and champion the technology that's not just being funded here, but around the world. And he's going to talk about that in his new book, CITIZENVILLE. We also have Meg Garlinghouse in the house. Give it up for Meg. As you know, she's the head of our social impact, and she is, I don't know anyone in our company more passionate about helping our members, employees, leave a lasting positive impact on our community. She also studied public policy at Duke and Harvard, so she's pretty dumb. So it's my privilege to welcome you guys to my good friend and Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, one of the things that really struck me about this book is the number of examples of other countries that are doing incredibly innovative things and engaging their citizens in democracy in a way that was really humbling, because I think we Americans, especially in Silicon Valley, think that we are the leaders when it comes to innovation. And one country in particular was Estonia.
I know.
I mean, Estonia is this crazy country that's doing
everyone's favorite country.
Yeah. But I question, Gavin, why do you think that is? I mean, there was an example from Estonia, Brazil, a number of other places. Why are other countries ahead of us in this one area?
So I thought I was some hotshot mayor. I'm 34, 35 years old. And the president of Estonia comes out to visit all of you folks down here. And they do the perfunctory stop by in San Francisco to justify the cost to the taxpayers and the expense of flying out here, just to do the photo op. And Tomas is there, English educated, but nonetheless had his translator. That's the pomp and circumstance of these meetings. And I'm sitting there all excited. You may recall a few years ago, we had worked with Larry and Sergey, and we were going to do free Wi-Fi in San Francisco. Got a lot of attention at the time. And so I was telling him, hey, Mr. President, we're doing some interesting things in San Francisco. Let me tell you. We got this thing about free Wi-Fi. You may not know much about this, but they're the things we're doing. These guys at Google, you're going to be visiting them, I know, tomorrow. But these guys, I think they know a thing or two about innovation and technology. It's probably a good visit for you. And I said, something else we're doing. No one's more frustrated. I know you're president, but for a lot of folks, the issue of paying parking meters with quarters and things is frustrating. So we're doing a pilot. We've got 3 pilots going on where you can pay for them on your cell phone. pretty amazing, Mr. President. And he starts looking at me, and he goes like this to his translator, and he says, I got this. I got this. And I said, well, I appreciate that, Mr. President. I know it's pretty impressive, isn't it? I'm glad you get it. And he leans over and looks at me cross-eyed, and this is how I begin the book. And he says, you know, with respect. I said, yes. He goes, with respect, we've been paying our parking meters, parking tickets, and property taxes for over a decade using our cell phones. We've been Wi-Fi'd for years. We actually do online voting and online registration. I'm sitting here completely perplexed. So I'm trying to be some hotshot American mayor right in the heart of Silicon Valley, trying to press this guy. And the question led to this point, why? Well, when they came out of the Soviet Union in 1991, they were so far behind, which allowed them to get so far ahead of us. You think about the DMV in California. You know this, and enough said, right? I wonder why we need to write this book, and I'm given, well, Mike may have been right about government. But you just saw the headlines a couple weeks ago in the LA Times, $208 million upgrade of their system. We just fired our contractor, to be named nameless. We've spent more than half the money, and it's not even halfway done. To do what? To update a technology system that's over 40 years old that we have patched together. Then in the DMV says, tomorrow, literally, the lights could go out on registration, license, distribution, et cetera. And it shouldn't surprise any of you, that burden of legacy systems, with patching together these old hierarchical systems that were built with cutting-edge technology in 1973. They're still well established throughout government. We went through a process. How many of you, by the way, have heard of the big scandal at the Recreation and Parks Department this year about money that wasn't? Yeah, so most of you have heard about that scandal. Got a ton of attention. How many of you are familiar with the county courts case management technology upgrade? One person. But most of you know about the parks. Let me explain and connect the dot. We started in 2004 with a $260 million upgrade to connect all the 58 county court systems and case managed systems into one aggregated system to streamline it, to decompartmentalize it, and to modernize it. A wonderful idea, long overdue. It was going to be done in 2008. 4-year project, $260 million. 2008 went by, 2009, and we decided to do a little midterm update. So what's the problem? Well, we were already over $500 million into that upgrade investment. One subcontractor infamously had 103 change orders on their $33 million component of that upgrade. They were already over $100 million. The courts decided to shut it down, but not before they updated a report saying, well, we could continue to make the investment, but that $260 million program to be done in 2008, we believe will now cost us $1.9 billion and be completed in 2015. Now, that's a scandal that deserves your attention. Yet one of you know about it, and this is your world. But everybody knew about the Recreation and Parks scandal, legitimate. But what did we do there? We didn't spend the money we had. We still have that money. And look at all the attention that's gotten, but not much attention on that upgrade. Our payroll system, $371 million payroll upgrade. The controller just fired the contractor 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's just a debacle. Over and over and over again, these things are played because the framework, the culture of technology as it relates to government and the world you're all living in and the world you are creating. And this book is about bridging that new divide, this new digital divide, and the expectations of a whole generation of digital natives that have grown up digital, this generation of choice, generation of participation, where you want more choices and you want more opportunity to share your voices in a government that's still hierarchical and still framed in an old machine model. Final point. We, as government, operate like this. You pay your taxes, and we take that dollar, and we put it into a big vending machine. And that vending machine disperses police, fire, healthcare, education, national defense. And if you don't like what you get, what do we do with vending machines? You've done it. You shake the machine. You kick it. We protest. Occupy movement on one side, maybe the Tea Party on the other side. And it's a framework of scarcity, of limited choices. That's government as we have today. Versus the world you're in, this idea of a platform that Steve Jobs so remarkably figured out, the old phones being government in many ways, to the new smartphones being the opportunity to create a platform of real active engagement. Jobs, as you know, didn't come out with hundreds of thousands of apps. He created the platform for private developers, third party, to develop those apps. And so my argument in the book is to move away from this machine thinking, this vending machine model, to a framework of government as a platform, to wit, the libertarian aspects that will allow you a more successful time with your family.
Thank you. I'm going to invite you to Christmas, if that's okay. So that was a little depressing, so I want to shift to...
But we have the solutions here.
We do, and actually that's where I wanted to shift. There's actually a chapter called, there's an app for that, where Gavin talks about some really inspiring examples, many of which are actually from Eric Cantor's office. But we'd love for you to share some of those stories of some really cool things that are happening that are examples of this.
This whole idea came about when President President Obama in 2008 framed his first executive order, which was an open data requirement, that agencies had to put data sets up online. And he picked up on something that Ronald Reagan, interestingly, did in the 1980s, and something that every single one of us in this room has benefited from. In the 80s, all our satellite technology was held, and all the data that was generated from that was held in the vaults of government through NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency. And that data was released in the 80s to the private sector. We still access that data, but everyone else can mash up that information. And as a consequence, we have GPS. As a consequence of the data initiative, we have AccuWeather. We have the Weather Channel. We're able to go on our smartphones and determine if it's going to be 75 or 76 degrees today, a week in advance. And in that effort, we created hundreds of thousands, one could argue millions of jobs, and extraordinary wealth, because we unlocked that information. What else is sitting in the vaults of government? Local libraries, state park systems. What exists in health and human service agencies? What can you do with that data to mash it up, to form new connections and different ways of seeing things? So the whole idea was to start putting these data sets up in raw, machine-readable ways, where you scrape it, we don't. We're not just providing a cleansed version. We're providing that raw data. There were fits and starts in the Obama administration. In some respects, it ran out of steam. But as mayor, I decided to pick up on this and localize an open data ordinance, and became the first city to do it. And we started putting these data sets online, and remarkable things happened. You may recall I was involved in some controversy around gay marriage a few years ago. But nothing I've ever done in government was more controversial than requiring composting in San Francisco. I mean, that's just tough stuff. Garbage police coming out, did you take your eggshells and you put them in the right basket, or we're going to fine you. People had a lot of fun at my expense. But we were pretty radical. There was the plastic bag bans, the water bottle issues, and we had high recycling rates, and we wanted to get to zero waste, and we were close to 80% when I left of recycling. So I was very fanatic about it. So we started putting data sets online. Here's an amazing thing that happened. As we did that, the first app that was designed was from a private group within 48 hours of our data sets come up, called an Eco-Finder app, to find the locations of all our recycling centers and have instructions about how you actually go about applying the principles we were trying to advance and make them easier and more readily available. And it occurred to me that if I, as mayor, went through a procurement process to do that, I would have had to put an RFQ out, an RFI out, an RFP. I'll explain this if you want me to. And we would then have to go through an appropriation cycle, and we would have then the lowest responsive bidder, and then we would open that up to a subsequent appropriation cycle, because invariably it would have taken over a year, and we would have a new budget, and then we have new elected officials, and maybe 3 or 4 years later on the other side would come a $400,000 or $500,000 appropriation to develop an app by the time it came out that was no longer relevant to the world we're living in. Within 48 hours, it was done for no cost to the taxpayers. So we started putting up other data sets, crime mapping data, crime information that became crime mapping data, transit data. folks there, Biz Stone and Evan Williams, were paying attention. They said, you know what, we can do some open APIs at your 311 call center so we can tweet all our complaints as it relates to potholes and other things. Group called See, Click, Fix, where you see something, you click it and photograph it, it gets fixed, you tweet it, and then we respond when we actually completed the task. And this whole world started opening up to me. And that opportunity to, again, open those data sets, to be more transparent, and all of a sudden find this civic engagement in ways we never could imagine, saving the taxpayers' dollars and unleashing the capacity of our citizens to, as you say, self-govern, to solve problems for themselves, and to feel more engaged and more participatory, to feel connection to government, and not feel, again, that we're doing things to you, but all of a sudden we're having this two-way conversation where we're doing things together.
That makes me think of another huge theme in your book around creating these incentive prizes. You talk a lot about the X Prize and what that did for movement in a lot of different industries. Here's a fun question. So if I could hand you $100 million right now, what challenge would you put that prize towards?
Well, I use one example. Imagine, we spend about $10 billion a year on HIV and AIDS to manage the problem. Why not put a $1 billion prize up to solve the problem? I mean, give me one good argument why we wouldn't or shouldn't do that. We're still focused in this mindset of procurement. Why not just put a prize out there? You want to deal with the Solyndra controversies? Don't pick winners and losers. Put $500 million up and only pay for performance. And what happens is it's like fly fishing or something. A lot of fish go after the flies. So everyone's rising, but one person, the strongest fish, actually gets that fly. And we only pay for performance. We've been doing prizes in the world. Back in 1714, the first prizes were established, the longitudinal prize. I mean, Napoleon used prizes before he invaded Russia because he wanted to deal with the preservation of canned foods. And he opened it up, and it turned out a candy maker got 12,000 francs and figured out a way for preservation. That crazy guy, they called him the Flying Fool, who got the prize to fly from Paris to New York, Limburg, because of a prize. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions in today's dollars were spent for a relatively small prize. Just think about space and what Virgin's now doing, Virgin Galactica. $25 million was spent to get that $10 million prize, the Ansari X Prize, not too many years ago. So why not take that construct in government procurement and move away from the RFQ, RFI model and start putting up prize money to solve big problems? It's one of the principles I'm arguing for in the book as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense in my opinion. So I'm going to shift a little bit and ask you a more sort of philosophical question around civic engagement. And whether there's ever instances when too much civic engagement leads to suboptimal outcomes, either because people vote for self-interest or immediate interest, or because a certain segment of the population becomes more engaged.
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. So President Obama, to his credit, said, you know what, these 35,000 self-organizing communities, I want to keep these voices amplified. And in 2008, he created something called change.gov. Great idea. And in fact, if you went right now and checked, see what's happened to change.gov, you can get ahead of what I'm about to say. He went out, and you may recall this vaguely, and he said, what's on your mind? And the opening letter to folks said, let's keep these voices amplified. Let's get you engaged in a two-way conversation of government. We're going to do this together. Don't change the player, change the game, he said. We got a war in Iraq. We got a war in Afghanistan. We got a war on terror. We got challenges of financial meltdown. We've got global warming challenges. What's on your mind? And just as Michelle Obama the other day unveiled the envelope at the Oscars, the president unveiled the envelope.
Make them guess. Let them guess what was the top thing.
Did the same thing in a big online town hall meeting. And what was it? That was the #1 priority, 2, 3, 4, the dominant issue that all these self-organizing communities wanted the President of the United States to focus on in his first 100 days in office.
You guys have to guess. Yeah?
Legalization of marijuana.
Legalizing marijuana. Obviously, he participated in that petition. Your friends know well. And you remember Obama made a flippant response. And that did not sit well with folks. And as a consequence, what happened to change.gov? You can look it up right now. It went down for reconstruction. It was transitioned into the regular old website at the White House. The transition's over. So this whole idea of having a two-way conversation is difficult. And the point, your question is, there's a sort of king of the hill element there, right? Just as people can take over a town hall and the loudest voices win, same thing obviously happens in your world online. What happened, though, after that was distressing. We turned off all those voices and we went back to this broadcast model. You vote, guys like me decide. And people felt more and more disconnected. A lot of folks felt disappointed until the election started to come back on. And then we were on a first-name basis, weren't we? Getting 15 emails a day from Hillary, you know, my friend Bill, and Michelle, you know, all the Jim, they're all first name. They're all my friend. And President, you know, hey Bob, hey Gavin, hey Pete. You know, there's a real connection until Election Day. And so we go through this every 2 and 4 years, and it's no wonder you're dissatisfied and disengaged. To the president's credit, he created a new petition site called We the People. But again, that's been wrought with peril. What was We the People? Jay Carney in the White House. If there's more than 5,000 signatures and petitions online, we will respond to your concerns. Well, you may recall a few weeks back, maybe a month or so, some audacious Brit on CNN named Piers Morgan had the audacity to challenge the NRA and gun policy, and so petition sites went crazy. Tens of thousands of people say, we need to deport this guy back to that country that forced us to bear arms in the first place. and there's Carney, you know, trying to focus on, you know, the drone issues or whatever else a few weeks ago, saying, I can't believe we did this petition site, and I have to mention a CNN announcer. And what did the president do and the team? Well, they raised the threshold for signatures. So now we have more signatures, even that threshold for a new Death Star. And some of you may actually believe we need one. But they're all okay. So this whole idea of citizen engagement is difficult. And the challenge is, if you're going to do it, you got to do it well. But my book's not about that. It's not about petition sites. It's about creating a new mechanism, a new platform for real citizen engagement. I don't want you to petition me to do things for you. I want to engage you so I can do things with you. It's a different mindset than just the traditional petition. And we've got to look at, it's the whole idea of active citizen engagement, not inert citizen, active citizen engagement. And we have now these tools of technology that none of us could have imagined. Maybe you were imagining, you invented them a few years ago. You know, one of your speakers that I love, and I reference him in the book, that you've had here twice now, is Tom Friedman. And I had the opportunity a stone's throw away with an economic development summit I had, and I asked Tom the question none of us ever ask ourselves in politics. It's the one thing we should ask ourselves every single day we wake up, and that is, what world are we living in? What are the trends that define the world? And so I asked him rhetorically that question, and he said, I could sum it up by saying the following. It's relevant to you. And you may have heard this. It sums it up brilliantly. He says, think about my book, The World is Flat, in 2005 on the New York Times bestseller list. 2005, not that long ago. He said, I went back in relationship to the new book he was here promoting, and Facebook wasn't even in there. He said, Twitter was a sound, 4G was a parking space, the cloud was in the sky, apps were things you filled out to get into Stanford University, LinkedIn was a prison, and Skype, for most of us, was a typo. None of those things existed as we know them today, including LinkedIn. And now they're ubiquitous in our lives, just 6 or 7 years ago. His point, we're no longer connected, as he was talking about globalization in 2005, but hyper-connected. And so, from my perspective, government's on a collision course with the future. And we know that when we can buy our groceries and shoes and books and have them delivered on our doorstep, at any time of night, we'll have them delivered there within the next 24 hours, sometimes less than that. And then you go to the DMV. So we're going to have to reconcile this. And that's what my book is arguing for, with specific, tangible examples and solutions.
That's terrific. Another theme in your book is around transparency, specifically data transparency. And I think I was really surprised. The example you gave is from the Department of HHS, that when people were asked to make their data transparent, rather than resistance, they were actually thankful.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, another sort of philosophical question around transparency in the context is there any data? Should all this data truly be transparent, or is there a limit? In instances that, in the WikiLeaks instance, that may not be in the best interest of the country, or is your idea is the more transparency, the better? Well,
the default in government is secrecy. Anytime the press asks me for information, I know that it's tomorrow's hit piece headline. Just invariably. It's all done through the Freedom of Information Act. We call them sunshine laws out here in the Bay Area. And invariably, what government's default is to give the least amount of information that's legally required and nothing more. Because God knows if we provide more, they'll have more ammunition to go after us. And that's been the case in politics for generations. And I'm arguing for hyper-transparency, that the default should not be closed, the default should be open. Because you know this better than anyone. You're providing the framework of this, that we're living in a fishbowl, in a glass neighborhood. That, as Stuart Brand used to love to say, information wants to be free, and invariably it's going to be, either on our terms or your terms. And so this issue of privacy is a dominant issue. You're dealing with it every single day. And the challenge for all of us is that the issue of privacy, as important as it is, needs to go hand in hand with the issue of transparency, and it doesn't. Because in so many ways, we're not informed about what we're consenting to give up on our privacy. And so we need more transparency. When I download an app, I didn't consent to have that app monetized or sold or be part of some system that I'm not willing to engage in, because I don't have the capacity of understanding of what I've just agreed to. So we have to advance hyper-transparency as it relates to protecting our privacy. And as you know now, privacy is a commodity. It's being used as a source where you can give it up and get something in return. It's a currency for many of us. And some people are willing to give it up for that customized service, but many of the digital immigrants, I'm among them, that's learning the language of technology, may be willing to actually pay a little bit more. But we want that choice. So it's a very interesting and challenging time, and particularly, as you note, in the world of WikiLeaks. I mean, in the world of Anonymous. Not just the white hat hackers, but the black hat hackers. And so I think government needs to wake up to this reality, and the president has struggled with this, right? The whole drone issue. This idea we have a kill list that includes American citizens that allow the president to ready, fire, aim, regardless of due process. And the president, the most transparent president in our history, is struggling with this issue and still has not released the legal justification for the ability to assert that privilege. So it's difficult. But we're waking, I mean, again, this world is changing at such a rate and speed that I think government needs to get ahead of it and needs to ultimately open its vaults in every respect.
All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and I'm going to open it up to my colleagues. So if you guys have a question, you can start lining up. And this question is about something that's near and dear to our heart, which is talent. So we believe that getting the right people in the right seats is the #1 determinant when it comes to the success of any organization. And my question is, how can we re-inspire, especially the millennials, to think about impact careers, and particularly careers in government, in a way that I don't think is top of mind right now? I think the idea is, if you're smart, you come to Silicon Valley or you go to New York City and you work for Goldman, but people do not think about government as a career opportunity.
Yeah. No, and I'm trying to make a case for government. I'm not trying to eliminate it. I want to make it relevant. I want to make it engaging. I want to make it meaningful. I want to make it as fun as Angry Birds. I have a chapter called Democracy for Angry Birds, or Angry Birds for Democracy.
It's actually quite good.
Because, it's interesting. You look at the millennial generation, most of you. You're the most empathetic generation in history, the most global generation in history. You have the highest IQs of any generation in history. I mean, you just know that because SAT scores are through the roof, and it's harder than ever to get into university. And you're more engaged civically than any generation. You're volunteering more than any previous generation. 140 plus million folks under the age of 30 in this country. And we're on digital natives, on a collision course with, again, the world. I talk about that generation of choice. Your world's being designed around you. I literally, I have a 3-year-old, but I kid you not, 2 years ago, she couldn't read, she couldn't stand, but she had found my iPhone. And you've all experienced, right? You've seen this with your nieces or nephews or some of you with kids. And she's going through there, and I literally called my wife. I said, come over now. This is the one. I'm Catholic. This is the one. She's a prodigy. We've all been waiting. It's happened. And it's here. We knew it. That moment we first laid eyes on her. Until I took her to preschool a year ago. And all of a sudden I looked around and, damn, every kid was doing the same thing. And it just got me thinking, you can't educate my daughter and your kids and nieces and nephews like we were educated. I mean, her brain is wired completely differently than my brain. And so this idea of education, this idea that we still have rows of desks that we had 150 years ago, still this idea that we have professors lecturing to us, this idea that we're all in the same classroom based on our date of manufacture, getting single subjects, is comical in many ways. It's tragic. And the debate on education reform is around seniority and tenure. Give me a break. What world are we living in? And that's why it's so enlivening, the guys like Sal Khan, right? That are flipping the classroom. The homework's done in classroom. Teachers are not broadcasting. They're mentors and coaches. We're bringing in people at different age cohorts so they could be mentors and mentees, like the real world we're all living in. We're not all the same age working together. That the subject matters are done in individualized terms, blended learning. This is the future. It's what Sal Khan's done, right? He leaves as the world's leading expert in artificial intelligence, leaves his classroom of 200 at Stanford to start Udacity University, changed the lives of millions. Coursera doing the same thing, edX, Western Governors Association. Something remarkable is happening here. And it goes to my large argument. The industrial economy is running out of steam. You live this. You know this. We don't get this. I mean, you've seen what's happened in the media industry. You've seen what's happened in newspapers. We've seen what's happening, I get it better than ever, with publishing. We've seen what's happening in the music industry. You're not buying albums. We're a choice of buying songs. It's customized. We've seen it in the financial service industry. The old days, my uncle, old broker, old-time broker, everything had to come through him. Now all of a sudden it's E-Trade, it's Schwab, and everywhere else. You're seeing the contours of that change in government. And it is this notion that I got in trouble with Colbert because I tried to describe this and he crushed me, where I said, big is getting small and small is getting big.
At which point he said, what the bleep is that?
What are you talking about? And yeah, so it didn't go well for me. But let me try to recover now. And the argument is this notion of Facebook youth at Tahrir Square, right? These armies of Davids with slingshots, in this context, it's technology, where people's voices are being amplified, where people organize, self-organize. Indignados in Spain, we don't talk enough about that. Or the Weibos, the microbloggers, 250+ million of them in China, and the Chinese government that spends more on suppressing the voices of its citizens than it does on defense, can't stop that version of Twitter and those voices in China. And what's happening here, these social movements, these populist movements that are taking shape, it's in the air. And so the ability of technology allows us to do things we could never have dreamt of. We now have access to more knowledge that used to be exclusive in the hands of large corporations and big government. Now it's in your hands. Democratizing voices, being able to self-organize. This is the future, and government needs to wake up to this reality. It's not top-down thinking anymore. It's bottom-up thinking. It's not centralized. It's not command and control. It's not inside out. It's outside in. It's a whole new mindset of thinking that I'm arguing for in CITIZENVILLE. It's not just about technology. It's about a cultural shift in attitudes and engagement. It's about what you're doing here at LinkedIn.
One of my favorite examples you give, and then we'll let Omar ask his question, is this idea of a donors choose for government, where any government official could post a project just like teachers can, and citizens could fund it. I mean, I truly, we got to make that happen.
Rahm Emanuel in Chicago just decided to do this with Midnight Basketball. He's doing a Kickstarter he's using with Indiegogo. And he's funding it, sort of crowdsourcing the support for these programs. Just to be, I mean, here's examples I love this example. In Brazil, they've been doing participatory budgeting for years. About a quarter of the budget in places like Porto Alegre are provided as a framework where you're allowed to not only participate, but decide and direct where the money goes. Last year and a half ago, in New York, they did their first round of participatory budgeting. They started with $6 million. It was a phenomenal success. And interestingly, more African Americans and Latinos participated than any other group. And people were satisfied, they were engaged, and they were enlivened. There are so many opportunities to take these principles and advance them more broadly to our approach for government. Because right now, we do the fraudulent town hall, don't we? Every 3 months, 6 months, we say, whoa, wow, we really engaged our citizens. The 35 of you that could take the time in the middle of the damn day to show up, only to find out there were 25 people with stickers and they had a particular gripe that got all the attention. And the 2 or 3 of you were in the back going, why the hell did I spend my time wasted here? And then we say, when we put a budget together, we had a lot of citizen engagement. We had 6 town hall meetings. This budget represents the people. I mean, we perpetuate this fraud because we don't know any other way. And what I'm arguing for is there are a lot of other examples and other ways to create a different kind of citizen engagement and a civic currency that exists, that intelligence that exists latently inside of all you, this idea that none of us is an expert in everything, but all of us are an expert in something. How do I tap that expertise, that networked intelligence, and engage a framework where we take advantage of that from a governing frame?
Awesome. Actually, Omar is an expert in students. He was a Teach for America. He is a Teach for America alum, and now he's in our Students Initiative.
I love it.
Hi. Appreciate your comments on education. Couldn't agree more. I had 2 really quick questions, if I may. So talking about sort of civic engagement, participation, and the role of technology in that, there's sort of also this, I guess, competing idea around, slacktivism. Does it sort of...
Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I'm just curious to get your take on that. Like, by making it so easy, are we actually changing the ways that citizens are engaging in ways that are perhaps less meaningful? And then the second question is just, it strikes me that you're talking about all these reforms and government as a platform, but you're not an external entity. You're not a pundit. You're part of the machine.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just get a status.
What are you suggesting? I'm part of the problem? Unbelievable. You didn't have to bring that up.
So, if you could just maybe you could give us a status check on how these reforms are going in our great state.
Well done. It's like the billboard. I don't know. Any of you have been on the 405 in LA, you'll appreciate this. Because you're stuck in traffic, right? By definition, if you've been on the 405. And there's a billboard up there that says, you're not stuck in traffic. But underneath it says, you are traffic.
Ah.
Think about that. That's what you just told me.
Well,
But I'm throwing it back at you because you elected me. So it's struggle. The reason I wrote this book was out of my own stress related specifically to trying to take my little department, the Lieutenant Governor's office, and bring it to the cloud. And I couldn't do it. I came Lieutenant Governor 2 years ago and said, first of all, the Capitol's not Wi-Fi. I was stunned by that. They're worried about security. And there were no agencies in government on the cloud because they're worried about security. and I struggled with it. And we eventually just broke all the rules and just did it, which I'm pretty good at in politics. I get in a little trouble. And I thought, why should this be so difficult? And don't I have any? I mean, I know I'm the butt of jokes as Lieutenant Governor in terms of my lack of influence. What does a Lieutenant Governor do? You all know this. Picks up the paper every morning, reads the obituaries, see if the governor's in there. I get it. All right, fine. But nonetheless, one can exercise their moral authority, right? And so we struggle with that, and I have. And even as mayor, I came to a lot of this late in my second term. But I'm not giving up. And so the idea here is if I can't change the culture top down, I got to maintain my bottom-up thinking. So I've created a challenge called the CITIZENVILLE Challenge. And we have mayors, large and small, all up and down the state of California and across the country, working with the Teach for America model in technology, Code for America. And we've partnered with them, and we've laid a series of principles on our citizenville.com website, series of principles of openness and transparency and getting innovation officers and data officers in departments in government and putting these data sets online. And so our idea is a bottom-up strategy. We're going to work with local government because at the end of the day, states are laboratories of democracy, that's fine and good, but cities are laboratories of innovation. And if there's one form of government that's still working relatively well, it's local government. And the reason why is mayors make lousy ideologues, and ideologues make terrible mayors. You know, if I came out as mayor of San Francisco, or any mayor, even in more moderate towns, with a Republican or Democratic plan to clean up graffiti, people would have looked cross-eyed. So what the hell are you talking about, a Republican or Democratic plan? This has got to be a plan to clean up graffiti. But you go at the state level, there's only the Democratic plan for job creation and the Republican plan at the federal level. Don't even get me started. It's so tribal. And the focus there is not what to do, it's a focus on who's to blame. The whole idea is to trip the other party up. Our focus is situational, whatever the situation calls for, so we can win the news cycle. We're focused legitimately on the next election, not the next generation. That's not just throwaway words, that's a fact. We're looking to get the biggest crowbar put in the spokes of the wheel of the other party to trip them up. But local government, you don't have that benefit because you're more engaged. Interesting thing about local government is proximity, and you know this generally in life, confers a lot more legitimacy. But as you move up, we tend to be a little more optimistic locally, but a little less optimistic, more pessimistic globally. So this whole idea is to take the Teach for America model, bring technology leaders and experts to mentor folks in government, to educate them, and to leave behind those examples and best practices. Success leaves clues. And to begin to scale this at a bottom level and then start changing the culture ultimately at the state level.
Any more questions?
My question was actually going to be about Code for America. I was a Teach
great.
for America alumni as well.
Oh, neat.
And I was just wondering kind of how you thought Code for America was really going to revolutionize technology, especially when it comes to the government, and really change things.
They're doing it. You know, Jen Polka, Tim O'Reilly, sort of one of my heroes of the Gov 2.0 movement, which is really what we're talking about. These guys have done an amazing job over there. With the support of Biz and Evan, all these guys, even Zuckerberg and others that have been supporting financially the efforts, and you guys as well, thank you. There are app stores now in cities all across the country for cities, not just the app stores on our Android platforms or iPhone platforms, where you can download things that otherwise cost money or would be delivered by the machine, government, are now being made unavailable on-demand platforms. And Code for America has been leading this effort. And they've been scaling best practices, and they've been allowing us to share those best practices. I'm now working with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Mayor Nutter's the chair of it, just signed up on our new engagement and commitment on the CitizenVille Challenge with Code for America. And we're going to try to get hundreds of mayors across the country to more aggressively adopt it and really scale that Code for America model, get more fellows, and get more people into government. And that ultimately will percolate up, in this case, to state and the federal government. I have real confidence and hope and expect, as long as you maintain your civic virtue of contribution, as you have with Teach America, and you all, as technology leaders, look to re-engage in the importance of the life of your city and our state. If, you know, some of you may be, I hate government, I love Thoreau, I'm going out when I'm retired up into the mountains and prove that I don't need government. But just think about it. If you had to wake up early today, you probably had an alarm clock go on, which was powered to some electricity source, which was government regulated. You probably had a glass of water, or for that matter, you may have taken a shower. That water was regulated by some government agency. You probably, some of you may have had an egg for breakfast, whose source of that egg was regulated by some government agency. You may have then gotten into a car, God forbid, has seatbelt requirements and other regulated requirements on roads that were organized and regulated by local, state, and federal agencies. You may have actually used some money today, which is backed by the good faith and credit of, well, government. You may have bought some gas. It's regulated in terms of its mixture and components. I could get you back home to a building that was regulated as it relates to fire codes, the fact it didn't burn down because the fire department was there, or the police department wasn't robbed. I mean, you can't escape it. And so in a world where government is omnipresent, it's the lights that just went off, it's the air we're breathing, you might as well re-engage and participate. And again, that's a specific argument that I'm trying to advance.
And really quickly, because I want to take advantage if people are feeling inspired, is because we actually have monthly hack days at LinkedIn, which we get incredible participation in. Are there a couple data sets that you would point people to, a favorite data set that needs to be hacked up for a solution?
Well, the ones that have gotten most people's attention are the transit data sets and the crime data sets. They're the ones that you see most often used and mashed up in most big cities. And it's the easiest ones for us to put the data sets on. But what the state of California needs to immediately, I've been pushing this and I'm not getting anywhere. And again, Governor Brown was out of town last week. By the way, I thought everything went really well last week, didn't you, in California? I'm just saying. I'm not responsible for yesterday. He came back, but it was good. And outside of exercising my power when the governor's out of state, which is rare, I would love to, to assert that by having an executive order requiring these open data sets to come online to give you more things to mash up, more data sets to use, so that we can, in an enlightened way, engage in these hackathons. I mean, this is what's so inspiring, is how inspired so many of you are to participate. And it's not for money, is it? It's reputational in so many ways. I mean, we give an example, Manor Labs in Manor, Texas. Town, it's like Estonia, right? Manor, Texas. 5,000 people outside of Austin. And this wonderful guy starts using this idea of InnoBucks, civic currency. Or just like, this notion, I riffed on Farmville, right? CITIZENVILLE. I mean, Mark's a good friend. But I remember meeting Mark. He was at one of my states of the city, and I had him up on stage because I couldn't believe here was some guy that had 100 job openings a few years ago at a time when everyone was being laid off, and I wanted to highlight him. And he's starting to describe to me his company. I'm like, come on. You mean people are cultivating virtual gardens, and they're spending how much time on it? And it's not just all kids in the basement doing it, a lot of and they're paying, the actual real, like credit cards you get, and you can't make it up. And I watched this phenomenon, right? And to his credit, take shape. And I started realizing the notion of civic currency again, this notion of reputational benefits. And so what Dustin did in Manor, Texas, Manor Labs created InnoBucks, where people that took the online and brought it offline and started volunteering in their community received points. And there were scoreboards virtually, and newspapers decided to promote that virtual scoreboard. And the community started getting more engaged. And then small businesses started saying, you know what? The more InnoBucks you have, the bigger discount you can get in my little coffee store or my little cafe. And it created this remarkable innovation and civic engagement. Simple idea. Using gamification, game theory models. All these games for good now you're seeing. All this movement, it's Eric Schmidt was right, isn't it? Just generally, we have 2 states, asleep and online. 40% of us, and by the way, this is a stat from a year ago, before we're even physically out of bed, turn on our smartphones. It's not much of an exaggeration. So my whole principles book, how do I meet people where you are and where you want people to be in this company?
On LinkedIn. All right, one more question.
We spent a lot of time on the different agencies and how things are administered. They are executing the rules laid out by the legislature, and it seems there's even more dysfunctional stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas of bringing more accountability or more attitude to get things past the finish line at that level?
No, I appreciate it. Look, why do we have a sequestration? It's because we all do what we're incentivized to do, for better or for worse. It's the old adage, you want to move the mouse, you got to move the cheese. You got to change the incentives. And we're incentivized for bad behavior. The biggest risk in government is taking risks. The biggest risk at LinkedIn is not taking some risks and learning from your mistakes and leaning forward and into the world we're living in. We're scared to death of tomorrow's headlines. We live in a civil service environment. We have a mindset that is remarkably bureaucratic, and you have that clay layer of bureaucracy where good ideas are difficult to penetrate. We have to adapt. We have to be more flexible. Our rulemaking is antiquated to the world, again, we're living in. It's not built to last, as was the theme of the Obama administration a couple years ago. It's built for change that is going to reflect the world we're living in. And that's got to be the new mindset in government. And that's not me indicting labor unions. I mean, these rules have been established for generations, but it is acknowledging that what we're doing and the way we've organized and incentivized our behavior is no longer truly relevant to the hyper-connected environment. So I have very specific ideas to change it. And as it relates to, just very briefly, because I know one more question,
yes.
To the issue of politics and how you elect folks, we got this game wired, don't we? We choose you, you don't choose us. Every 10 years, we take that census data and we gerrymander districts of like mind. And then we have parties that absolutely excoriate us if we have the audacity to reach out to the other party and actually be perceived as working together. And then, on top of that, we have all of that persuasion industry money, the special interest money, that make us feel real good, because we're probably got 90% approval in California with special interest. They're quite satisfied with us. Just the rest of you aren't. So we've consolidated a lot of power in the three branches of government. The one consolidation that I'm arguing for is that people power, citizens. Not being inert. It's time to step up and step in. It's time to re-engage and not accept that status quo, not accept your frame. Don't wait around for the guy or gal on the white horse. Use your moral authority. Hack your way to success to the extent you can in an enlightened way. And let's reimagine this relationship.
All right, Joe, you have 15 seconds to ask the question.
And I
Gavin,
have,
you have
13 seconds.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
and I'm watching the clock.
Obviously, as LinkedIn, we have a huge role to play and are playing a huge role in this shift. You kind of addressed this question with your last statement, but as Californians, how can we all walk out of this room today and help personally make this shift?
Well, I want to say get the book.
I was going to say,
that would be just so
I had that in there, but I only
typical.
had 13 seconds.
I know you already got it, so that's good. And I'm grateful. There's so many, I mean, I lay out, and honestly, I want to say because literally it's in the book. Yeah. And I lay out very specifically how people can get involved and how I think you should get involved. But there's nothing, you know, look, what I want to do is I'd love to get you in these hackathons, the things you're already doing, and serve up the DMV to you.
It's actually a great idea.
Serve it up. I mean, again, this whole idea that organizations, I mean, what's the old Joy's Law? It says, no matter who you are and how good you think you are, most smart people work for someone else. And so, you know, we can't, the solutions are a click away, but they're not necessarily within our organization and government. And so that's, again, the spirit of this movement. And so I'd love to see, with LinkedIn, very specific to your question, a way where we can work with our state officials and do some pretty audacious things. And that's something I specifically would love to follow up with you and challenge all of us to do.
I think it's a fantastic idea. All right, well, first of all, you definitely need to come to Topeka for Christmas, so I'll arrange that with your people.
With Dad.
Gavin's going to stick around for about 15 minutes to sign books if you guys were lucky enough to have gotten a book. But please join me in thanking him for...
Thank you all very much. Keep up the good work. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.